So how are you? Good morning.
Hey, I'm great. How are you? It
It's
looks
good.
like it looks like we made it just in time. We are live.
Excellent.
I am hoping that my internet is going to hold up for this interview. A fact of life here in Nepal is there are pretty frequent internet interruptions and power interruptions, so the infrastructure is a little bit sketchy now and again, but hopefully the internet gods are going to smile on us.
Yes, I foresee it as well. Let me close my
Great.
door for a
Good
moment.
to see you, Adam.
Yeah, good to see you. So how are things in Nepal? It's good weather. It's very warm here in Southern California. It's 85 degrees and people are complaining of the heat. I don't understand that, but that's what's going on.
Well, the climate here in Kathmandu is actually very similar to the climate in Southern California. It's very temperate and dry most of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I think
It's a
you
little
said.
bit colder, probably not quite as warm.
Okay. Nice. Nice. So, all right.
So, Adam, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you for our audience. This is Dane Dormio, and I'm really glad to be sharing this conversation with you with my really good friend who operates a hypnotherapy practice out of Los Angeles called Impactful Changes Hypnosis and specializes in working with military veterans suffering from PTSD. He's a 9-year veteran of the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Division, and his background includes 10 years of general hypnotherapy practice, including dating and relationship coaching. Welcome, Adam Goodson. It's great to see you this morning.
Thank you so much. Really sweet of you. I like that intro.
Awesome. So, I've there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about, but just to kind of put this in context, the theme of this show is Tai Chi, Qigong, mind body mastery, internal martial arts practices as they relate to health, wellness, longevity, spiritual development, performance enhancement, and individual evolution and world transformation. So, usually the people that I talk to on this show have some kind of background in martial arts. And what you do is not exactly a martial art, but I consider it to be very, very close. There's a lot of crossovers, I think, between internal martial arts, meditation, and hypnosis, and that's kind of a big area of what I'd like to explore. But also, part of our nonprofit mission is bringing the benefits, the healing benefits and self-development benefits of mind-body practices to underserved populations,
Mm-hmm.
including veterans,
Yeah.
and so I know that is that's a concern that we share, and that's something that I'd like to talk about as well. From the perspective of mental health and personal development.
Yeah.
So, to get us into things, I'd like to hear about uh, your origin story. um, how how you went from, because you were a veteran yourself, of course, you're in the Marine Corps,
Yes.
um, and not in law enforcement, and so you have experience in both the military and law enforcement world, and I'd like to hear about how you came through that to find your way to hypnotherapy and your specific your passion and your reasons for wanting to help veterans
Yeah.
and helping with veterans issues.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Dane. So I grew up in South Central Texas for the most part, and I had a very unusual childhood that I thought was normal. And no one's childhood is normal, by the way. Give up on that, please, because we're also unique individual people. So, talking about feelings and how we process things or how we make decisions, or what's the difference between a good decision and a bad decision, right? Was not really discussed in my home. There wasn't a lot of touch. There wasn't a lot of affection. My mother worked a lot, and at times, I mean, I was doing all kinds of activities, and so my parents got divorced. I did have some very strange things that happened, like I had physical abuse from my father. I had sexual abuse from other people that were involved in my life. So I was dealing with this trauma, and it's not always a comfortable conversation to have with people, and not that we should have those conversations with everybody. Then, as I got older, I just kept trying to relate to people. I studied martial arts for a while. 9/11 happened. I thought I was going to go save the world from terrorism, and I ran off on my horse to go join the Marine Corps. And I was already working in like Tong Sudo, which is a Korean form of karate, and that mindset of being a martial artist and being able to defend yourself and defend others, or just mess people up, was kind of really my intention behind that. It's like I wanted to be strong. I didn't want to get hurt, but I wanted to hurt other people. It was kind of that mental intention that was going on behind my eyeballs at the time. I was working inside prisons for the Marine Corps. That was my primary function. And so people would join the Marine Corps and they would do some kind of crime, or usually a small crime. Some of them were sometimes very big and very serious crimes. And some of those people in there were for sexual assault, which also triggered me mentally. It's like, oh, these people are in jail for the same thing that was done to me when I was younger. And so that really caused a lot of more turmoil for me. And then I went to a very interesting place you might have heard in the news called Guantanamo Bay, where I had to sit down and walk around and interact with people that were plucked off the battlefield in Afghanistan and Iraq and different various other theaters of operations. And so I'm dealing with these people face to face, and so that's where my PTSD really came from. So after that, I came back home and I was desperate. I was very lonely. I was very needy. And I immediately fell in love with this great woman. And she is a great woman. We just weren't great for each other. And after that, we got a divorce. And my world just kind of came crumbling down. I attempted to hurt myself. I attempted to kill myself. It was not a good situation. And that didn't work. I decided to change my life right then. I need to figure this stuff out. And I started dating randomly and trying to figure myself out and go through self-help. And I started reading everything. And then finally, nothing was working. I found this crazy self-help book, and I was sitting in a Starbucks in San Diego, and a guy walks by and says, "Who are you?" I was like, "I don't know who you are. Buzz off." And I was very angry at the time. I was like, "Buzz off." And he's like, "No, I'm a master hypnotist, and the book you're reading, only master hypnotists read. And I want to know who you are, because like it's a rare book to see outside of serious hypnosis and NLP circles." And I said,
Was that Steve P?
No, actually it was not. It was not Steve P yet, but I had met him. And
Okay, because that seemed like the sort of thing that Steve would do.
yeah,
So
no, very much so.
I don't mean to jump ahead in your story at all. But hey, Adam, is it possible for you to either come closer to your laptop or maybe tilt it down or something? Because your face is pretty low in the frame.
Oh, is it? Okay. No,
Yeah.
It shows my face in like a weird position. Let me see if I can. There. How's this? Am I framed better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Good,
I
good.
think you'll sound better too if you're a little bit closer, maybe.
Okay,
There you
good.
go. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, so sorry, but thank you for telling me that, Jane. Yeah, no, and I've had those kind of conversations with Steve as well. And if no one knows who Steve is, Steve Pickers is a really brilliant and kind of outstanding individual in so many different aspects. But he got a little popularity by being a dating and relationship coach, but also helping specifically with tantra and intimate relationships between men and women. And he has some very controversial, but he also has some very interesting things. So I learned from him too. And this gentleman that I met, his name is Robert Zentash, and we started talking. And he said, "Hey, come over to my house, and let's have a cup of coffee." So we went and we talked, and we had this friendship, and uh, we had like maybe like a 1 hour to 90 minute hypnosis session that he did for me. And my PTSD was greatly reduced, if not completely gone. And I was like, "This is magical. What happened? What did you do?" And he's like, "It's like this is high level NLP. This is what I do." And I was, so then I just started learning from him, and then I started learning from other people in the San Diego area and abroad. And um, what I found out is that I could make money by doing smoking, how to help people to quit smoking. And I was like, "Ooh, I can make money at this. This is fantastic." And then I just kept moving towards that goal and working with people, and seeing that how veterans are kind of underserved, and as well as martial artists as well. I do consider most military people to be martial artists. Then I started really working on myself deeper and deeper, and then now that I've gone back into physical health, my mindset has changed, and there's a different kind of intention behind my exercise or my practice, whether it be yoga or even just practicing punches on a beanbag or a punching bag. It's really there for me to increase safety and health of other people and myself around me, and to find a path of least resistance to find my power. So it's been quite a journey, but that's where I'm at right now. And then of course I live in LA now, and I'm in a great relationship. I have a fantastic girlfriend. We've been together for 5 years. Just had our anniversary, and yeah, things are blossoming for me. And so it's a real 180-degree turn for me as compared to 8, maybe 10 years ago, when I was really searching for the answers. And then I found them, I'd say about 4 years ago, to really to be impactful with it. So that's where I come from, and that's really my journey to you guys here today. And then I don't know. I hope you're still there. I don't know if I lost connection, but I'm still here. So let's see what happened. Maybe if I lost anybody, that's okay. I still love you. I'm gonna keep talking here. But this is okay. I see your message here, Dane. Hurry. But yeah, so I was able to work on myself and really cultivate myself into doing something fun and enjoyable for other people. And working with veterans has been really rewarding. And then I started working with people um, that were in a crisis, that were, sometimes I had some people who came to see me because they had been in a serious assault situation, or a violent situation, or some kind of trauma. And then that's what my mentor, Robert Zentis, was doing. And now I've really carved out my own niche and who I work with. Right now I'm working with a couple of previous gang members who used to be in gangs, people they change their life? How do they reestablish themselves? So that's really interesting for me to work with right now. Yeah. And I think you might be back, Dane. I don't know. I was just kind of waxing
I
philosophical.
think I'm back too. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my camera working again.
No worries. So yeah, while you were gone
Um,
briefly, I was just talking about who I'm working with currently and the type of people that I work with um, as clients or facilitators, and what I'm doing with them. And yeah,
I appreciate you doing that. I I'm curious, what was the book that you were reading?
oh, it was actually a combination of books. It was Mind Lines by
You
Michael
said there
Hall.
was a crazy self-help book.
Yeah, it's called Mind Lines, and the other book is called Tongue Fu, and they kind of go together. And essentially, what happened is Mind Lines was a book that was ripped off by the author of Tongue Fu. And so, if you read Tongue Fu and you also read Mind Lines, they're exactly the same book. But seeing them together is a rarity because uh, the royalties that go to Tongue or to the Mind Lines go straight to the author of Tung Fu because she got plagiarized and ripped off. So to see those two books together is very rare. It's mostly in the NLP arena, and because it's kind of difficult to understand because it's very academically written for NLP practitioners. It's kind of snooty, if that makes
So,
sense.
so do you mean it was like a literal word for word plagiarism?
Yes, fairly much so. And there's a couple fine tuning nuances in there as well. And I really enjoyed those. I enjoyed the nuances. It's almost like uh, for those of us that do Tai Chi or martial arts or forms or a certain style, it's like, oh, you know, have an open fist for this movement. Like, why? You know, or a simple different gesture that is made by the hands. And so that's what I picked up from that. I was like, oh, like this guy does this questioning a little differently than this woman does, and this woman does a different form of presentation. She answers the questions in a different way. So I found that to be very interesting, and that was what really sparked the conversation between myself and Robert Zentash in that moment.
I see.
Yeah. So
That's it's that's one pretty powerful um, generator of synchronicities. A lot of times, the book you're reading, or you see somebody reading a certain book, and it forms a connection like that.
yeah,
Those are those are pretty amazing coincidences that can have life-changing ramifications. Just connecting with somebody who's reading a certain book, or because you're reading a certain book. I know Robert and I know Steve as well. I
yeah,
wanted to ask you about him because I actually know him because through martial arts, he trained with my instructor, Rich Robson, and also with me for a bit. And yeah, quite a character.
yes, very
And
large personality and a heart that's bigger. He's a very special person to me. He's almost like a father figure, but if not like that very abrasive uncle that screams at you at times and loves you at the same breath. And so I'm very blessed to have him as my friend and as a mentor. And I say that with a little bit of tear in my eye because he's done so much. Just being of service and being a good friend and being a good teacher to me. So yeah, he and he's very well read too. He has no shortage of books in his library.
are you friends with Dave Snyder?
No, actually, I'm not friends with Dave Snyder. I've met him a few times, and very briefly, and we just there wasn't very much of a connection there. So I've studied with some other people in the area of San Diego, and I just found that when it came to listening to him or going with another direction, I decided to go another direction. But I know that several people have trained with him.
Yeah, Dave is a hypnotherapist and martial artist that I actually have scheduled to do an interview with
Oh, excellent.
coming up in the next few weeks. So
Good.
I know there's we have quite a few connections from the Southern California conscious community, and I was thinking about it just yesterday. Actually, I don't actually remember how we met. I don't
I remember.
it was I remember the time period roughly, but I don't remember what the first encounter was. I think we're probably
It was over 6 years ago. I remember that, and we bumped into each other at the Stats every once in a while because I know you were doing some coaching and some mentoring there with some people in the coffee shop, and as was I. And I remember us talking a couple times, and I think we shared a few audiobooks. But we went. I think we met at. It was a very interesting entrepreneurship, business-minded kind of thing where entrepreneurs meet, and
yeah, I do have a sense that it was some kind of like personal development / professional networking kind of activity. And
well, this is what's really interesting is the gentleman that spoke at that event, I believe his name was Mel Cutler, and he's very prominent in San Diego as well. And my mentor, Robert Zentash, was there as well. But I didn't meet Robert there. I met Robert several months later. So I always kind of pride myself on that synchronicity, is that I wasn't ready to meet Robert in those moments. I had to mature, I had to grow, I had to get, a little bit on that same frequency or vibration, or maybe even like-mindedness, however you want to call it, to where that pathway would be open. And so that's why I think it's so rare that I cross paths with Robert Zentis 5-6 times in the same room. We were talking about it. It's like I was there too, and it wasn't until I was at Starbucks that we bumped into each other and he recognized the book I was reading, and then the friendship and the mentorship began. And so I always talk about that because it's like I wasn't ready, I wasn't mature enough to meet the teacher. So sometimes we're not ready to meet the teacher. When the student's ready, the master will present himself or herself. And so it took a little bit of a time for me to be ready to meet the master, so to speak. So if anyone's looking for mentorship, if anyone's looking for leadership or teaching, maybe don't get your feelings hurt. Maybe you're just not ready yet. But when you're ready, those people are going to show up, and they're going to come in droves. I assure you, it's going to happen.
It's kind of a frequency thing, huh?
Very much so, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, saying about how when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, because I've observed it to operate both ways, actually.
Yeah.
That when the teacher is ready, the student also appears.
Yeah.
And it's a path of any kind of mastery path you're on. If you're pursuing something, developing a skill at a certain point, whether you think that you're ready or realize it or not, when somebody shows up and says, "Hey, help me, teach me, how do you do that?" That's the sign from the universe that that's where your growth is. That's the direction for you to be growing in.
I agree, and I don't know if you have this experience in your life, but when you're at capacity as a coach or as a teacher or a mentor, and you're like, I just can't take on any more responsibilities, I can't take any more students, and then this just golden spirited person shows up, and they're like, I'm an empty vessel, I'll do whatever you tell me to, I'm ready to learn, and you're like, this is the student I've been praying for. I'm coming out of retirement. I'm opening my classes. I want this person, and I want to teach this person because they're so special. And that's a special moment. I have a mentee, a young man that I'm mentoring right now who does sales, and he wants to make money, and he wants to do this, and he wants to do that, and he wants to clean. I'm like, okay. And he's so eager and has so much energy. He's about 22, 23. And myself being 37, it's like, okay, young man, calm down. Let's focus our energies. You have so much energy. Let's focus it. And to see people like that grow, and now he's doing much better in his sales job. He's doing much better in his relationship with his girlfriend, and he's exercising more, and he's eating better. And I'm like, yes, this is where we want to fine tune ourselves to get a good base. And yeah, it's a fantastic experience for me.
Yeah, mentorship and teaching is something that I'm really passionate about, and uh, I I encourage students of mine to share what they're learning as they're learning it, and kind of break the tradition in martial arts of you have to train for many years with a master and then become a master yourself, and then finally you're qualified to teach. It actually works a lot better when we all see ourselves as constantly both a teacher and a student, and have an attitude of being of service in whatever way we can from where we are right now, because the people that have the greatest impact on us um, are often people who are a little bit ahead of us in whatever path we're following, not necessarily somebody who's light years ahead, but somebody who's enough to be able to easily relate to where we are, and that we can relate with and grow towards. I want to circle around to your origin story again, because I'm curious about when you decided to join the Marine Corps, and I noticed that was on September 12th, 2001.
Yeah.
That you enlisted, right? And of all the specializations you could have gone into, what drew you towards law enforcement?
So interesting or funny story. Originally I was supposed to be working in avionics. So I was supposed to be fixing planes. So I went to Florida, and I just graduated from boot camp, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna go fix airplanes." I was like, "Okay." So I go fix planes after combat training, and start working there and start learning. And there was this moment where they said, "Hey, we're gonna teach you how to do trigonometry in 5 days." And I'm like, "Well, I stink at math." And the time I did, now I'm much better at it, strangely enough. Maybe more on that later. But yeah, so I just could not do trigonometry. And so I failed the test and retrained, and failed the test again and retrained. And 3 strikes, you're out. And they said, hey, you're going to go, you can't be in this job field. You can't pass the test. So I was really disheartened. And they made me a military police officer. And coincidentally, this is kind of funny, everybody in the Marine Corps that was in my command was like, "You're stupid. You're an idiot. Like you can't do this." And I was like, "Oh God, like this sucks." And like, "You're gonna go be military police. You're gonna be a dummy." Well, the school for military police for jail guards was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and that was very close to my home. So they essentially sent me back home for 2 months to train in a new job field where I could go see all my friends from high school, all my childhood friends, my family. And I was just like, this is the best. Like, like I failed. Okay, what's the worst that could happen? And it was like, no, I failed, and the best happened, and I could still rejoice in that space in that moment. And I was like, so I had this big smile on my face, like, and they're like, you're an idiot. I was like, that's right, I'm an idiot who's going home. So that school was about 3 to 4 months long, and so I got this. It was a beautiful experience for me. And then I went to Okinawa, and so that's how I fell into military police work. And what a great mistake it was, because I was working inside a jail with anywhere between 30 to sometimes 50 grown men, adults, and having to manage these people that are not getting paid, that are confined to a small room or a slightly larger room, and that just they can't leave and they have to wear an orange jumpsuit and I'm in charge and I have to tell them what to do and I'm the big boss man. And so I learned a lot about leadership, mainly how to do it poorly by being a jerk and being forceful. And then I started learning how you can be a good leader and get people to do stuff without having to hit them with the stick, so to speak, but offering a carrot, or generating voluntary compliance. And that really changed my outlook on martial arts and so forth. Everybody can break someone's arm, but how do you communicate in a way that gets people to move in a different direction that they don't want to go to, right? So that's how I fell into I know you asked me about military police, but that's how I got to it.
It's so basically you were assigned to that specialization because you couldn't learn trigonometry in 5 days.
Yeah.
I'm what I'm thinking of is that's a really similar background actually to what Rory Miller comes out of. Are you a fan of his?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Oh well, he's I kind of think of him as like the big cuddly teddy bear of the self-defense world, but he's a really popular self-defense author and teacher with a background in military corrections environment like that, and a lot of what he writes is about that aspect of self-defense, that it's much more about people skills and soft skills and being able to generate willing compliance,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to being the big dog in the room, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's very tiring to be the big dog in the room. It's exhausting. It's definitely a young man's game. When I see people like in the UFC and they're pounding their chest, and I'm like, that's great. I'll see how you behave when you're 30. I'll see how you behave when you're 40. And the gentleman, what's his name, McGregor, who's just so much tenacity and fire coming out of him. I'm very curious to see what kind of gentleman he becomes and develops into when he's in his 50s. And because I think that's where there's a humility that comes with age, but there's also this ability to learn more when we're humble. So I'm going to look into, you say is it Rory or Roy?
Rory, Rory, Rory
Okay,
Miller.
Yeah, I'm going to check him out. Thank you so much, because that's exactly who I'm kind of sourcing those people out right now, because just being in military police, I had this instance where I was attacked from behind while in Japan, and I got this gentleman. I had got good limb control, and I threw him over my shoulder, and he landed, and he hurt his back. And so to me, it was perfectly fine. I defended myself. I didn't get hurt. The other guy got hurt. Good for him. So I prided myself on that. But as the days followed, his back injury stayed, and it got more serious. And it turned out that there was a fracture. And here I am, this martial artist that's supposed to be able to defend myself, but now this person was injured and they couldn't do what they had to do. It was in a it wasn't good for them, and it was just like, it was kind of a wake-up call to me that I wasn't willing to receive at the time. And I was like, I really hurt somebody. They have this permanent injury now to their body, and they're not going to be able to heal from it, and it's going to affect them for the rest of their life. And this is a young man, and so that stuff like that. And it's like, like, martial arts is serious. Like, you can really damage somebody else. We don't, and you can damage yourself too. But it changed my mentality about, you don't have to swing the sledgehammer at all the times. So it taught me a little bit more control.
That's a really great anecdote, and because it illustrates the I guess the aspect of compassion, and actually what Rory and other authors in that space write about is the um, the consequences of self-defense, which include physical, legal, psychological, ethical, and often, I mean, this is something that I'm sure you're very familiar with working with PTSD. It's PTSD is uh, is very commonly associated with something that we've done that we later regret having done, hurting another person, and that's the slight. I guess the way that self-defense and particularly martial arts are very commonly approached is that aspect of things is not even considered, the aftermath of supposing that actually, as Mark McYoung says, another one of my favorite authors, that the first problem you have is if your martial arts doesn't work. The second problem you have is if it does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true, and it happens. So it's like, ooh. I met a gentleman who worked with, he was on the USA judo team, and very interesting, very intense guy. And he actually was friends with Ronda Rousey and went to Japan, and where she won the bronze medal in women's jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh, how was that? How was that to see her? And he's like, well, she was out of control. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, she was this young woman, and she was very athletic, and she worked really hard, and she partied harder. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, you didn't know? She got really drunk and lost her bronze medal. So here's a martial artist, very verified, very codified, very well trained, and got belligerently drunk, and it's like, here's my bronze medal, and letting other people wear it, and she lost it. All that hard work, and she lost her trophy. And so I was like, oh, that was really crazy, man. Like, he's like, yeah, after that, she really mellowed. And I thought it was a brilliant observation of another friend, to see that when someone has this, like, I can beat anybody in the world kind of attitude, and then gets humbled. And it's like, oh, my awareness didn't keep my trophy. And so I thought it was a really sweet story that he told about his friend Ronda Rousey back in the day. And yeah, as we grow, our awareness needs to grow too.
I want to transition from something that you were just touching on about the kind of the change with age.
Yeah.
Because a big distinction. Remember, I wanted to mention, though, also related to this.
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed twice now a guy named Nick Isipchak, and both of those interviews are on the Facebook page, Chai Tea Tai Chi. They're also on the Martial Energetics page. And Nick was a guy who started out in Shaolin Kung Fu, started his martial arts career in Shaolin Kung Fu, and eventually moved to MMA and fought several professional fights, including the UFC, and won most of them. And he was a really, really competent fighter. And he found his way eventually to Tai Chi, and now that's his primary base of martial arts is Tai Chi. He's a Tai Chi instructor. He's actually coming to San Diego this June to teach a workshop, and he's a really great illustration of that principle you're talking about how people mellow out with age, because in his 20s when he was fighting competitively. He was just a really fierce competitor, and now he's in his 30s, and he's discovered Taoism and Tai Chi, and he dedicates himself to making art and being with his family, and he's just really really mellowed out a lot. And he said when we were talking last week that it was kind of like it was a phase he had to go through and kind of get it out of his system, but he really doesn't feel the need or the urge to push himself that way for competition. So he's a guy that you'll probably find interesting if you watch either or both of his interviews. You'll probably dig them.
Yeah, well, this is what's really interesting, and this kind of it didn't surprise me, but it did amaze me. I worked with a few Vietnam era war veterans, and so they have a whole different attitude than these younger gentlemen like myself, and people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan currently. And I'm also I have two people that I'm working with that are previously gang members. Like they've been to jail, they've hurt people, they've done time in jail, and now they're out. And they're like, I have this. They didn't realize that they needed to heal until they got out of prison and had a job. And it's very interesting to hear their stories. And like one of them's 45 and the other one's 52. So to give an idea, like street gangs, they've been around for a while, and they both agree, like, dude, that fighting and just shooting guns off and hurting people, and go around doing this crazy like outlaw Jesse James stuff, it wears on you. And these guys are 45 and 52, 51, and they look like they're 65. They're just like, it's a hard life, and now they move in a very different way. They speak a very different way, and then I see that same thing with some of the older Vietnam era veterans. They have fire in them still, but it's a very different kind of fire. It burns differently. So it's like, interesting. So even with them, I see it as well, and it's a beautiful experience to reflect on, at least for me.
So I want to talk about your healing work. Your business is Impactful Changes Hypnosis, which can be found on Facebook, can be found on the web, and you do one-on-one sessions with. There's an interesting thing to me about hypnotherapy is the crossover between physical and psychological healing, and it's a technique that really, or I guess a field that operates in both of those realms, with a distinction between sort of athletic types of pursuits, which in combat sports and martial arts, we see this, and also in all kinds of athletic activities, that there's an age range that people can participate, and beyond that, people really don't do it. And then there are more internal mind-body development practices that you can start practicing at any age, and you can go on practicing them for the rest of your life and continue advancing and gaining benefit as long as you live. And of course, Tai Chi, Qigong are in that category. Yoga is in that category, maybe to a lesser extent, but certainly that's what the internal martial arts have been known for, is that the older you get, the better you can get, because it's something that you can continue doing regardless of age. So there are, I'm sure this will make perfect sense to you.
It does.
When I explain that my definition of Qigong, which Tai Chi and internal martial art includes Tai Chi and internal martial arts, is it's defined by the three regulations: body regulation, breath regulation, and mind regulation. What I like to say about Qigong is it's the best thing ever because everybody knows about the benefits of exercise and how it improves uh, every aspect of your life and your health. Everybody knows about the benefits of meditation and how it improves every aspect of your life and your health. And at least most people know about the benefits of breath work as its own healing modality, and particularly for the emotional healing and psychotherapeutic applications, but also other things like the Wim Hof method, you know, withstanding freezing cold and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So exercise, meditation, and breath work, all very powerful modalities, fields in their own right, and Qigong combines all three of them into a single activity, which makes it just the best thing ever, in my opinion. And for me, meditation, or I'm sorry, hypnosis or hypnotherapy falls under the category of mind regulation. So what I'd really like to explore is the importance of mind regulation as for somebody who has an internal practice, a mind-body practice. Presumably, it incorporates all three all three regulations: body regulation, breath regulation, mind regulation. But I'd like to get your perspective as a specialist on the importance of mind regulation for self-healing, both physical and emotional, and what are some insights that you could share that from your experience as a hypnotherapist that anyone can apply or incorporate into their meditation or their mind-body practices for purposes of physical and emotional self-healing?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, and this is what I tell everybody that crosses my path or go like, hypnosis, that's mind control. You're trying to control other people's minds, or I see people who promote that. And that's very nice for marketing. It's very nice for maybe going on, some kind of conspiracy theory or something like that. And that stuff is interesting. I totally understand it, and I've read all those books and I've gone to those seminars. And the type of mind control that I really dig is my own mind control, where I control my mind. My mind is a tool. I tell my mind what to do. And I see this breakdown in modern day psychology that human beings are just robots that are controlled by the chemical balances or imbalances of their brain. And I'm just like, that's simply not true. Make a true decision to say, I'm in control of my thoughts. And when thoughts arise, it doesn't mean I have to sit there and go like, oh, I'm losing control. You sit there and go, oh, what does that mean? And explore it from a place of neutrality where it's not good, it's not bad. But just look at it and say, okay, why is that thought coming up? One thing that I do is when I have clients who come in and they say, I want to have a loving relationship. I go, okay, great. Now imagine you're in a loving relationship. What's that like for you? And they're like, what? I understand that you want to get into a good relationship, or you want to have better health, or you want to make more money. I'd like for you to just imagine that you already, and you can do this if you're watching this, or you're watching a replay, please rewind it. And you say, ask yourself, like, if I had $1,000,000, how would I feel? And once you get past the excitement or the little superficial sugar rush, see how long you can concentrate on that thought of being a millionaire. Now, like that might be like a law of attraction or the secret for some people, and I totally understand that and I honor that. What I'd like to say is, let's go past that a little bit more. Let's see if we can stick with that fantasy or that imagination a little bit longer. And as we're there, let's see how our thoughts would change if we had $1,000,000 in our pocket. How would our thoughts change if we were in a loving and fulfilling relationship? How would our thoughts be if we were the grand master of our martial arts school, and we had our own teachers and disciples, and they were just like, yes, we love your martial arts school, you're great. And you're like, okay, what would change with your personality? What would change with the quality of your thoughts? And what I find is that people will come up with these strange things they'll say where they actually will reject whatever it is that they're asking for. They'll reject it. They're like, oh, I'm not deserving of the $1 million. I'm not worthy of this love. Or uh, there's so many other martial arts who are better than me. And you're like, okay, great. That's where we start. Let's work on removing those blocks. The best thing is to know that your mind works for you. You don't work for your mind. Your mind's going to work no matter what. It's not going to stop working. It's going to keep working. So it's important to recognize that your mind is a tool. Use your mind. Same as your body. Focus on your consciousness is another one. Your consciousness is probably the best source, and I say source reality, which is a little bit more hippie woo-woo, but there's this talk in certain circles right now that the human experience is just a simulated program, a computer, like we're all stuck in a computer programming, which is kind of sci-fi-ish, right? It's like, it's being a little outlandish, but I saw an interesting interview with Elon Musk where he says that this is about 50% of all the conversations that he's having in his life for the past 3 years have been based on this idea that we're in a programmed
A
computer.
simulation.
Yeah. So he's like, and someone asked him like, what's the chances that we are in the source reality? And he's like, oh, I can't tell you if this is a program or not. I can't tell you if this is the real world, but it's like 64 billion to 1 chance that each one of us are in the real reality of the moment. So if we don't know what's going on outside of us is real or not, we can generalize that what is truth, and it's our thoughts, it's our beliefs, it's the present moment and how we're experiencing it internally, not externally. And once you get to that place, you can really come from a place of neutrality and saying what is right and what is wrong, and make good decisions for yourself and empower yourself. I don't like this whole hypnotize people to be mindless slaves, or people who just recite dogma over and over again. I like people who go ahead and challenge and push back and say, hey, I don't like that. I want to make it better. Or I don't like that because it makes me mad. Okay, cool. Why does it make you mad? And find that understanding, that golden thread, and really bring us together. So if you're doing a meditation practice, just know, or you're starting out, I don't know about you, Dane, but how many people have you heard or met that you're like, oh, I tried hypnosis and I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes. And you're like, okay, cool. It's like, I just had these thoughts that kept coming in my head. You're like, those are thoughts that have been building up. You need to clear your inbox of your email. And that's why it's stacked up. It's the first time that your mind's going, oh, he's listening to us and we have a lot to tell him. So please do take a moment of your day, today or tomorrow, and please do it every day, to just kind of check in and say, hey, how do I feel? What am I choosing to think about? What am I choosing to feel? And that's a big problem with trauma and PTSD in everyone's lives. We kind of hold on to this this particle. I call it a particle because it's such a small part of our lives, of trauma, and that thought keeps repeating it. And it's like, well, how do we break that cycle? How do we change the meaning of that? And how do we do it that serves ourselves positively, it serves other people positively, and it serves our community positively? And that's good ecology. So I would ask those questions of ourselves. Our mind works for us. Is this good for myself? Is this good for others? Is it good for my community? And what am I really feeling right now? Am I being a judgmental person, or am I being an observer? And those are, I think it's a great place to start, especially in our martial arts practice too. Why am I throwing this punch? Am I throwing this punch to hurt somebody? Am I throwing this punch to protect myself? Am I throwing this punch because I like to move? And why is movement important? And oh, movement's important because it allows me to take a choice in the physical dimension or the physical realm. Okay, what's important about having choices of your movement in a physical realm? Oh, it means that I can choose to defend myself or create or destroy. And what's important about that? Why? I'm a human being and I can make decisions. And I'm going to make a decision about what I want to eat today. I'm going to make a decision about who I want to listen to today. I'm going to make a decision on, what flavor snow cone. So I think that's really what I focus on and give to people in a very roundabout way at times, but also in a very precise way.
So recognizing the self as the agent of choice,
Mm-hmm.
and and fully embodying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how the role of mind regulation in healing the body and the physical body and the emotional body. So you mentioned PTSD and trauma as, and we, there's the image of PTSD as being this this sort of monumental thing that that veterans have, that survivors of horrific violence or near-death experiences have, but trauma is pretty much universal and endemic, and um, it's more, it's really a matter of degree. With individuals, the amount of trauma that we are carrying and the amount to which we experience PTSD, which to give it a pretty simple definition, it's when there's something, an unpleasant experience that you keep thinking about or remembering or re-experiencing, even though you'd rather not.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that definition, I think that's something that the vast majority of us can relate to in some fashion. Whether it's a relationship breakup or a childhood experience, or anything that we perceive to be a failure in life. So what is the role of mind regulation in healing the physical and emotional body?
Yeah, so I like to use the analogy of an aquarium for this one, because some people like to go swim in the ocean and look at all the fish, and some people like to go to the aquarium and look at all the fish. And like, oh, look, I can look at all these fish without getting wet. Like, that's right. You don't have to worry about drowning either. You can just enjoy it and eat your popcorn and drink your Coke and go, oh, look at the big Garibaldi. It's a state fish of California. It's huge, and they're like, oh, it's amazing. Um, the reason why I say that is sometimes we're always stuck in the experience. We never left the experience. We never healed from the experience. And whether it is a sexual assault and I don't want to construe this as medical advice, this is just things that I've sat down with people and I've witnessed in them explaining and feeling very different afterwards during that conversation. And what happens is that they are still stuck in that moment in a first person view, if that makes sense. And being able to get somebody out of that and experience it and go, okay, that was me inside the aquarium. Now I'm outside the aquarium, and what does this look like? What is it? And guiding them through those different mindsets. What's the healing process is really just a different perspective, and how many different perspectives can we get, and which perspective works best. Some people would say, man, I really want to be Superman in one instance, so I'd never have to get hurt. Or it's like, well, okay, but like being Superman's kind of hard too. That's a different kind of bag. And sadly, a lot of veterans feel like that. Like they have to be Superman. They have to save the world. They can't save themselves. because Superman can't get hurt, and Superman can get hurt, and veterans can get hurt. And how do we recognize that we've been hurt, or something happened, or we saw something, we didn't do something, we did do something? And the biggest lesson that I've learned is forgiveness, compassionate, pure, unconditional love and forgiveness. And as soon as we as a human species evolve into that learning as a whole, we're going to have a lot. That's when the real super growth is going to happen. It's generations away, I'm sure, but the more that we as martial artists understand that I'm throwing a punch, working with these gang members, for example, they didn't know that they were doing something wrong at the time. They thought that was the right thing to do, and that was the best thing that they could do for themselves in their point of view at the time. Now, us as a martial artist, let's say like you're the most evolved, enlightened person, and you are going to go fight crime. Once we can start recognizing that criminals hurt as much as the victims do, because they're probably a victim as well, then we can start healing it in a different way. And it's very difficult for people to see past that when they're in a place of trauma. So getting people to heal faster and more often, and spreading this message of making that decision to heal and to develop and to understand our capabilities and our abilities as human beings, it's the best thing that we can do right now, not just for ourselves, but for the human race, for the planet. And it might sound hippie woo-woo, but to get down to very specific, I challenge each and every one of you to say to yourself, how can I heal the planet? How can I heal myself? Am I worthy of healing? Does the earth, does it deserve healing? Do other people deserve healing? And that doesn't mean you have to do what I do. You can make cupcakes and make people feel good. I love cupcakes. If someone gives me a great cupcake, I feel great. A great cup of coffee, or a great Tai Chi or yoga development course, or just get out there and do it. So find your gift. It's there. It's inside of you. Grab it up, because people need it. I hope that answers your question. I think I went a little roundabout there.
There's my mind is just popping with all the great nuggets in there that I having responses to.